Thank you, Tim. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining in this sunny day, at least in Lincolnshire. It's cold and frosty and expecting snow, I guess, but second winter coming, as they say. Just quickly to introduce myself, you'll see Apostolos Papadopoulos probably on that's my full name, but Tolis is absolutely fine. That's my nickname, easy to pronounce. So I'll just talk quickly a little bit about my background so you know where I come from, except from the obvious one from Greece. So I've always had a passion for crops, so I decided to come to the UK and study. So I spent a year doing a foundation course at Plymouth University, Bicton College, if anyone knows of that. Then went to Selhane, again as part of Plymouth University, to do my bachelor in agriculture, focusing on crop science. Then moved to Sutton Bonington, Nottingham University, and I did my master's in crop science and management. Then went on to continue in the academic mode and did my PhD in soil science, specifically soil physics, connectivity of pores pretty much, and how that relates to hydrology, root penetration. And then I carried on with the research, and I did a postdoc at Lancaster University. It was a multidisciplinary work with Rothamsted, Cranfield, Aberystwyth, and it was more on roots, hydrology, and soil structure. And then I decided to go to the dark side, as the academics call it, and went to work as an R&D manager for Plant Impact. So they were developing biopesticides and biostimulants. So there was sort of the first step into technology developments in an applied way. And then I went to Branston, potatoes that is, not the pickle, as we used to say. And I've joined as R&D manager there, developing products both for the field, but also in the supermarket where we can stop greening, as well as the storage. So in 2012, decided to venture out on my own and started Crop Intellect. The first development work that I've done was a synergy that increases chlorophyll consistently. So the idea of the Crop Intellect as a company is to develop innovation and secure them with patents. That's core. So R-Leaf is the third patent portfolio that we have. So the first one, as I said, increased chlorophyll. We put products in the market to test basically the environment. We licensed the IP, but eventually ended up selling the IP to a subsidiary of Cargill, which is Frontier Agriculture. So this is known now as the technology R100, if you have heard of Intracrop. And the second technology that we have is more on the vegetables and fruit, increases shelf-life. We're actually stimulating the plant through the wounding mechanism to release calcium from the vacuole inside the plant cell. So we're releasing calcium, balances stresses, and the extra calcium in the cytosol is absorbed by the cell wall. Perhaps too early in the morning for a bit of plant cell explanations. And that's how we increase the shelf life, and that technology and product are available in the UK. We're actually been selling it through Agrovista, but that's open for users, and we're in South America and the Mediterranean, Balkans. So let's get to R-Leaf, and I shall present to you what R-Leaf is all about. I've been developing R-Leaf in the last 6 years, and I have been quiet, been careful not to be too far ahead of my time. And back in the day when fertilizer, nitrogen was cheap, it wasn't that much of, it wasn't a great opportunity, but always the sustainability side and the efforts to reduce nitrogen are very valid and have been growing. So RLIF, just to keep it simple, is a technology that is sprayed on plants and is able to capture nitrous oxides, so air pollution, and break it down to plant feed, as I call the people that don't know much about agriculture, but pretty much nitrate, and that happens on top of the leaf. So to start with the problem, why RLIF? Why has the why do we develop this? So there's the greenhouse gases, which is carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, N2O, and these are basically the culprits for global warming. So whilst everybody is talking about carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide is the focus as when we're talking calculations, so even methane is translated to carbon dioxide equivalent. Nitrous oxide is one of the major polluters, and the reason for it is because it persists in the air once it's produced for over 120 years. Unlike carbon dioxide or methane, it's less time. And agriculture, having been a heavy user of nitrogen fertilizers and continues to be, is actually responsible globally for 20% of the greenhouse gases produced. And actually of those 20%, 70% is nitrous oxide, directly linked to nitrogen. And so when you apply nitrogen fertilizers in any form, pretty much in the soil, the bacteria will break it down and they will produce nitrous oxide. So it's a natural process, and doesn't only come from the fertilizer, but also comes from the breakdown of organic matter. So in forests, and land, from a scientific point of view, scientists have been looking at this, the release of nitrous oxide from grass, for instance, because that's high in organic matter, for the last 60, 70 years. And then we have the nitrous oxide as a whole, which is responsible for 26,000 premature deaths in the UK alone. So that's why we're trying to do something about it, and is both reducing the amount of fertilizer that is used, so that we reduce the source of the problem, but also because RLIF has the ability to capture that nitrous oxide and convert it to nitrate. That is the unique point about this technology. So just to bring it into perspective, fertilizers that are stabilized, they'll still produce the same amount of nitrous oxide because eventually they will break down. So if you're looking at 1 month release of nitrous oxide, a stabilized nitrogen might have a reduction on that, but overall, in the longer period, that nitrous oxide is still produced. So another, like bacteria that produce nitrogen, again, they produce nitrogen, but they don't have an effect as we do on the existing levels of the atmospheric nitrous oxide. So that's the unique point about RLIF. So from an agricultural point of view, we've got the soil health. So using less fertilizer, or the long-term use of nitrogen that is synthetic, has deteriorated soils. We know that. I think Australia apparently has got 50 years left in the soil to be still productive. So climate change also is causing extreme weather events. We're experiencing this, and there is also a link to the subsidies now that are closer to ecosystem services. So they want the farmer to be the provider of ecosystem services, and that's how they can reflect receiving some subsidies. So that is something that we're also tapping in. And of course, the high cost of nitrogen fertilizer, inefficiency. From an economic point of view, you think that in our lives, who buys something that will waste half of it, basically, and you put 200 kilograms of N, knowing that 100 kilograms is going to just be lost. So there is a change that is required, innovation to be adopted, and that falls what everybody uses these days, regenerative agriculture. So what is RLIF? RLIF is a photocatalyst, and a photocatalyst is a semiconductor or a mineral, a nutrient, an element. So zinc, copper is also photocatalyst, but we use the most available, most potent and safer, which is titanium dioxide. So titanium dioxide have been studied in the last 100 years, so we know very well how it works, but the key point is that it works under UV light. So all the studies and currently is used in many industries, in filters. It can clean water, it can clean the air, but typically that happens under UV light, and UV light is a high intensity light basically, and once that light shines on the photocatalyst, we've got the production of electrons and holes. Let's call it surface charge, and it's that surface charge that is expanded to react with other chemicals and break them down. It's basically a catalyst that works with light, photocatalyst. So the clever part of the innovation of RLIF is that we have a process that has been developed and patented to in simple ways bend the structure of the photocatalyst so that it can work under normal light. So basically something that could only happen in a closed environment now can happen outdoors. That's our innovation. But it's not just that, because there is a cost attached to it. So a process that is called doping basically. So you infuse minerals into the structure to enable it to work under normal light. That, if you look at some of the methodologies, they can cost £1,000 to produce a gram. What we have done is shorten the process so that we can actually make this available to an industry like agriculture. We are using 500 grams per liter, and I'll explain later how it's used, 2 liters per season, 1 liter at a time. So overall, we're using 1,000 grams per hectare. And there's very specific, the specifications of the product are very important. There's a specific particle size. We don't go to nanoscale, which raises issues with any material. And we don't want the material to be absorbed by the plant. So we want to sit on the surface, and this is where the catalysis happens. So we prepared the photocatalyst, the titanium dioxide, after the process into a suspension concentrate. I think you'll be familiar with the term. It's not water soluble, it's not reactive, and pretty much it can be added into the tank mix and sprayed onto the foliage. And once it's on the foliage, that's what it does, is absorbing energy from light, daylight. Don't think that it has to be sunny for this to work. A lot of the work that we've done is actually on a dull day or representing a dull day. And it's quite simple to measure the nitrate that is produced. And it doesn't have to be on a crop, actually. So you can spray wood, you can spray glass, any surface, and as long as it's exposed to light, then it will work, and it will break down nitrous oxide to nitrate. And this is why you wouldn't put it on roofs or you wouldn't put it on roads, because the nitrate that is built, it's a source of pollution itself. But what a beautiful thing to have plants receive the nitrate because they can utilize it. And the nitrate, if you think of a chemical structure, the nitrate is built on that structure. So as the nitrous oxide break down, the nitrates will be attached to that photocatalyst, and that is they are attached as crystals basically. So we need a bit of moisture for these crystals to wash off or solubilize and being able to be taken by the plant. So typically during the day, whilst we have the light, that photocatalyst is built up with nitrate. You've got to be careful not to think that this is masses of nitrate built on the foliage that can cause a problem. It's actually, on an average day, we have something like 200 grams to 400 grams of nitrate produced per hectare. So it's quite a small amount actually. And the photocatalyst, it's spread nicely on the foliage, so you don't have any points of concentration of the nitrate that could be toxic to the plant. So the morning dew typically, or rain, or actually a day with high moisture, you probably seen nitrate absorbing just moisture and solubilizing, becoming a droplet. So that's what is happening, and that basically cleans the photocatalyst, and that means that the next day as the sun or light comes out, then that continues to work. So R-leaf provides nitrate to the crop on a small amount and on a daily basis. And of course, as 30 days go on, some of that photocatalyst will be lost. We've actually recovered 80% after 6 weeks on the field, and we've done a lot of simulation work. We've got stickers to make sure that stays on. Ideally, it's sprayed with other material because that helps. So as a tank mix where you've got fungicides, adjuvants, that supports the stickiness and spreading on the foliage. So by no means we want R-leaf to be applied as on its own or as a separate application, unless it has to be. So simple application to the crops. Most of the work that we've done has been on wheat, so we understand wheat very well. Where we've seen where we've actually had a reduction in nitrogen, we have a better effect. So, and you would appreciate that, if you have a plant, a crop that receives 240 kilos, then more nitrogen, gets to that peak, the response curve of nitrogen. So we're not going to see a lot of effect, but a reduction of 20 to 30%, then this is where R-leaf can show that we can compensate for that potential yield loss. And it's finding the sweet spot between how much yield we can compensate, how much the nitrogen can be reduced, what is the value of that reduction, the cost of the product, of course, and also that balance in the yield and cost. That's, we've got a calculator which you can use from the data that we have produced, and we're producing more data this year. And just, I think it's a good point to say also that the development of the R-leaf has been supported by Lincolnshire Council through some grants, Climate Kick, the European Union, the EIC Accelerator, the Innovate UK, together with DEFRA, and recently we also have Breakthrough Energy, which is a fund for sustainability by Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and Richard Branson. So the big guys are involved. They gave us a substantial amount of money actually to test it in more crops, getting into the US, South America, and the Innovate UK has given us another substantial grant actually to do more work, and that's more on the scale up, getting new formulations, testing the reduction of nitrous oxide outdoors. So there's a lot more to show basically for it. And you will see that on the presentation it says R-leaf creates carbon credits and increases plant yield. So the carbon credits is something that is coming through. We've been working with SustainCert, who is an independent body and auditor, and they're guiding us as to how we can put together a methodology. So basically, a farmer can use our leaf, and because they use our leaf, they can get carbon credits. And it's not because of the reduction of nitrogen. There's other methodologies to do that. It's because of using our leaf. And I'll show you a little bit later as to what we validated today. So the fact that we can put it on any surface, I put there that every leaf can be an R-leaf. And as a matter of fact, we're using it on grass. We use it on professional turf as well. Green walls, green screens. So we've got some high-profile accounts in London trying to clean the air, and also recently Heathrow. So they've got 300 hectares of grass that we can use it there to directly have an effect on the atmospheric pollution there. So what is R-leaf? Already explained, but this is the picture where we're saying the electron and holes. So we have the material, the titanium dioxide stack on the foliage, the nitrous oxide is in the air. I just want to clarify, because I had a lot of questions about, obviously if there's no nitrous oxide at all, then you're not producing any nitrate, that's clear. However, because air mixes all the time, there is a background level of nitrous oxides, and that includes NO, NO2 and N2O, and typically we've been working on these levels. So we're not aiming for converting the nitrous oxide that is produced by the fertilizer that has been applied, but just purely working on the background levels. So that needs to be clear. And we've done some work in the most remote places in Ireland, for instance, on some turf, and still there's high levels of nitrous oxide, so that we don't need to take into account any areas that don't have nitrous oxide, basically. So the electrons and holes that I've mentioned, that's the chemistry, that the surface chemistry is produced, and basically superoxide anions and hydroxyl radicals, and this is the reactive species that the photocatalyst produces, and this is what breaks down the nitrous oxides to nitrate. So I hope that's clear. I think you will have this presentation recorded. Well, it is recorded, so you will have it. You need to refer back to that. So what are the benefits? I've separated the benefits into farming benefits and economic benefits. Economic is the reduced nitrogen fertilizer, the net zero supply chain. So we work with Tesco. We won in 21 the Agri-TGAM competition. You might have seen on national news that they're testing, they're instigating the largest trial in the country to reduce nitrogen fertilizers, and R-leaf is a solution within that. We're working with Branston, we're working with Hunterpack, with Clemens, Southern Eastern Farms, some others as well. So it equates to around 200 hectares of trials where we're reducing nitrogen this season, and see whereabouts is the replacement that we can do in a number of crops, as I've mentioned. So we're going to vegetables, root crops. Unfortunately, not so much with cereals, but we're working with Marks & Spencer's with that, M&S. We've got Hovis on board, so we're doing a lot of work on cereals to demonstrate that we can turn lines like the Hovis, bread makers, into net zero products. They're very interested, they're very excited. We try also to understand who is going to pay for that value creation. And just to introduce you a little bit to the carbon credits. So typically the carbon credits are owned by a farmer, the landowner, and what you do is you claim against a methodology that's been approved and launched with either the likes of Gold Standard, Vera, and Region Network that we're actually registering with. And so the farmer or project developer will go against that methodology to claim the carbon credits because the farmer has used RLEAF. That's how the benefit is added. The issue becomes where if Tesco, M&S, Sainsbury's want to absorb that greening benefit of the supply chain, they have to buy the carbon credits. So that's an easy link. But working with Tesco is not as clear as to what their position is on carbon credits, but we're trying to influence that. But there's another initiative that is called the Value Change Initiative, and that means that a project is built with all the partners, including the packers, and then the value created is absorbed within that supply chain. Now again, who pays for it, and pretty much in this case, who pays for the RLEAF, that's something that all the supply chain can contribute towards it, and the money, the value created can be shared. A direct saving because of the reduction of fertilizer with the current prices, and we've got a calculator for that. Obviously ticking the box for subsidies, and DEFRA is well aware of RLEAF because they have supported it. So that's, that hopefully will be part of policy in an accepted way. Carbon credits and obviously the increased yield, we have seen where if you get the balance right of the reduction of nitrogen, RLEAF has the ability to increase yield. And we have seen that in the previous years where farmers were not so keen to reduce the amount of nitrogen that they use, and still because of using RLEAF we had an increase in yield. So that was the benefit, and it can still be. So on the farming, soil health, increased nitrogen use efficiency because whatever is released from the soil as nitrous oxide from this fertilizer is been applied. Again, that is something that we recover. Resilience and sustainability, soil health related again, regenerative agriculture, constant nitrogen supply. From an agronomic point of view, that is of great interest because when you apply nitrogen at 40, 60, 100 kilos a hectare at a time, that stresses the plant, and from scorching to too much either in the soil and the roots, it causes quite a big change. And when that nitrogen becomes available to the plant will actually expand quickly. It will grow, which means the cells will be stretched, so you are opening the potential for disease to come in. So the way we supply nitrogen, as I said, is a small amount on a daily basis, which doesn't stress the plant, and it can have a continuous growth, and it doesn't have that flush of growth and then stop because the supply has changed. So we would provide that longevity, and later we'll explain how we can even split the application because typically we recommend T1 and T2, 1 liter at each time, but when these are close to each other, we can actually split the last application into half liter and go for T2 and T3. The return on investment, I guess that's something that is important for the farmer to understand and be able to fit it in both in an agronomic sense but also in the financial sense. So we've got to look at the reduction of fertilizer. We've done work at Imperial College, who they have a setup where we can use the photocatalyst, replicate a specific light intensity, and we put through that chamber, if you like, a specific air can be outdoor air, or usually we manufacture the air to replicate the outdoor condition. And then we run this for 3 hours or 5 hours. There's a nice methodology that we follow, so it's a valid methodology, and we can use the material then to be analyzed for nitrate. So we know how much nitrate we produce on a daily basis. And from that, we can say how much nitrogen we supply to the crop and what this equates if it was compared to a nitrogen application. So we're actually supplying the equivalent of 90 kilos of nitrogen over a 3-month period, given that we have applied those 2 applications of R-leaf. So from a direct saving point of view, again, that might have changed a bit, you would know better, but a reduction of 20 to 30% of nitrogen, you can save approximately £10 per hectare, accounting that the farmer has paid for R-leaf, and that can be up to £40 per hectare, depending on what price you supply R-leaf, but also what is the current price. The long-term investment is soil health. If the farmers do continue to reduce the nitrogen and be consistent, and I think this is where R-leaf is key, so that it provides that confidence to the farmer to actually reduce the nitrogen and not having the fear that they're going to lose yield. There is that quality aspect as well, where we want to keep the protein up. We have seen that the R-leaf contributes to a protein increase if you don't reduce the nitrogen, and is very good at compensating the protein content where the nitrogen is reduced. But if that variety is important to have a specific nitrogen level, then again, from an agronomic point of view, it's going to be the right balance. So the carbon credits and the net zero, so carbon credits obviously an economic benefit, but also the acceptance by supermarkets that and consumers now that that benefit of the sustainability is there as well. Recommended retail price £25 per litre. That, I guess, in a serviced customer, that might be a bit higher. In a direct sale, it might be that, but we're trying to stick to that figure for many reasons. As currently the product has a huge potential. We will develop a number of projects that relate to carbon credits, so that has to be the value for the product. And I have to be clear with you, I'm a scientist turned into businessman, but the product, it has the first part, the material is expensive, you can look it up, but also processing it is quite expensive, and then you have that as a raw material, and that is formulated then into fertilizer. So it is an expensive product. It's not, it's not a huge profit locked into that. Again, the message allows to reduce synthetic fertilizer, and we're even increasing the profits either by yield or with carbon credits, which is to come, and that's the 2 aspects of it. The formulation, because we looked at the regulatory aspect, titanium dioxide is a food ingredient, has been having recently some issues in the European Union in the nanoscale, because anything nano can be absorbed by the human being, the cells pretty much, and that is an issue. But from day one we knew that, and also, as I said, because we don't want the material to be inside the plant but on the outside, we've got a large particle that cannot penetrate through. We've done also chemical profiling of the plants that we use to make sure that we don't produce any chemicals that shouldn't be there. We've also looked at the potential of breaking down bacteria or actives, because we're putting fungicides, insecticides. So we're actually very selective at nitrous oxides, at gaseous phases, and not actives. I'm trying to answer some questions you might have. And we are also doing analysis of the end product. So we're looking at flour to make sure that there's no titanium there, because it's been phased out in the food industry. But of course, we also commissioned work with an international regulatory company, and they confirmed that there isn't any regulation that will not allow us to use titanium dioxide in farming, and that is for US, UK, and the EU. And these are pretty much the markets that we're interested in, so we haven't looked further. So what we have done to classify the formulation as an easy fertilizer is to add manganese, molybdenum, and zinc. These are elements that are typically used in cereals. We do have other formulations with different loadings, different minerals for different crops basically, but this is the formulation we use for cereals. So that's the minimum that we can add to get the formulation to an easy fertilizer. So you can take into account that the zinc, manganese has a bit of value and balance other products, but that's the main reason for doing that. Again, a message: prevent soil degradation by reducing synthetic nitrogen, providing nitrogen to the crop daily in a slow release manner, if you think of it, which prevents scorching and reduce the risk of fungal attacks compared to other nitrogens applied. The carbon credits, as I said, registering with Gold Standard, Region Network, and verified Vera. We are expecting within 4 to 5 months to have the first methodology accepted, so we can actually claim for carbon credits. Now, currently, we're working with Agrina, where we're adding R-leaf there, so that if a farmer wants to use R-leaf to reduce the nitrogen, they can actually do now and claim carbon credits for the reduction of nitrogen. Not for R-leaf yet, but for the reduction of nitrogen. And that is Agrina, and we're happy to connect you with them. And this is the first step, pretty much, that R-leaf is responsible for some carbon credits. We do have some documents that were produced, sort of introduction to carbon credits, understanding how they work, because there's a lot of information out there. There's a minefield, and we've simplified it to make sure that that's understood, and particularly in farming, to see how a farmer can benefit from that. The validation I talked about earlier, so we used a tool that's called the Climate Impact Forecast Tool, CIF. They're supported by the European Innovation Council, and we validated that 2 liters of R-leaf used per hectare in a season will actually remove 5.4 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per year, and for that season. And that is important. So we are actually a technology-based removal. We're not avoiding. And avoiding is if you would do something or you change the practice and you avoid to do what you used to. And there is also adaptation, which is providing a solution that adapts to a change. So if the temperatures, for instance, go high and you adapt to that, that is also possible to get carbon credits. But this is actual removal. So we actually remove the product, and the carbon credits for this are going to be of a higher value. And sorry, I'm talking about the carbon credits quite a bit. It is to come, and that is going to change the use of the product, if you like. It's going to be increased, and the whole point of carbon credits is to increase the adoption of a technology that has a sustainability benefit. I'll skip that, I think, because again, we're getting the carbon credits because of the removal event tool. We've used the tool. We're registering for carbon credits. I've explained about also the value chains initiative that we're working with the supermarkets. There are, again, we have a document that we can share for your information, but Bayer, Syngenta, Diageo, there are some huge companies there, Nestle, that actually are part of this. So that's reality, and that's moving fast. And there's another aspect where farms, although they are not expected to be carbon neutral before they claim carbon credits, but this is something that, you know, it's not policy, but is expected, if you like, by the industry. So again, RLEAF is another opportunity to just provide that high number so that a farm becomes net zero, and that is also important from a supply chain point of view as well. Yeah. So how to use RLEAF? Typically, tank mix, I guess typically 120 to 100 liters per hectare, which is, for cereal specifically. I did say earlier T1 and T2 growth stages, 1 liter at a time, and where T1 and T2 are quite close to each other, like a couple of weeks, then we can actually split the application and put it half a liter at T2 and half a liter at T3. Now, the reason that we are also going at T1 and T2 and we don't put everything all at T1 is, as the crop is growing, where the new foliage is shading the foliage that has been sprayed. That still works, but probably reduces the efficiency because the light intensity is reduced. So that's why we have split it and we go at T1 and T2. From experimental point of view, we did a lot of trials using T0, T1, T2, T3, T4, intermediate applications, double, triple the volume, and we looking at the results and what we produce as the effect of the crop. T1 and T2 are the most appropriate applications. And of course, if you double the volume, so if you use 2 liters per hectare, you're producing more nitrogen. But then what that nitrogen does to the crop is not directly relating to the benefits. So it's not a matter of if you put 10 liters, you're going to get masses of a crop. So we have worked very hard with a lot of data to get to this optimal, if you like, application. Some efficacy evidence. We do have a lot of reports. Some of them are GEP, some of them are just field trials that we've done ourselves or other distributors or on farms. I'll start with some work that we've done at the Manchester Metropolitan University. That's not efficacy on the crop. This is one of the most renowned teams of photocatalysts, and we sent the material before it was processed, and we've done work where you would see the top 2 graphs are under UV radiation. So we see what the material as a photocatalyst does, and then what it does after a process. So you will see on the also you'll see carbon dioxide produced, but that is just purely a method of measuring that reaction. So it's nothing to do, we don't produce carbon dioxide. This is the specific method, and they measure carbon dioxide to see the efficiency of the photocatalyst. So on the left-hand side top, we've got UV, the untreated material, which is about 120, and then on the other side next to it, you will see that we're going over 1600. So we have 10 times more effectiveness as a photocatalyst in the process that we develop. And then below, you will see that we've got the fluorescent light, so very much an outdoor light. The material untreated produces about 70 as a reaction, whilst the dot material, the processed material, produces 700. So again, we're keeping that tenfold increase in efficiency and efficacy. And if you were to see the untreated material under UV radiation and the treated material under fluorescent light, we're actually working better than the material under UV light. So that's the material is very potent. Got to pass on. So 10 times more effective, just to have that in your mind as take-home messages. So we've done work with Imperial College, and we'll continue that to quantify the amount of nitrate produced. And just this on the slide at the bottom, you'll see the details. So we had 0.8 grams at 3 hours, which produced 101 milligram per liter nitrate. So we're working out the 500 grams in the field that we put per hectare, how much they will produce, and what is that as an equivalent over that period, which results into 90 kilograms per hectare of nitrogen. And that's the work. Again, this full reports, anyone that wants to dig into science. In the chamber, we start with a dark phase to equilibrate the material and the gas. Then the light comes on, and this is where the photocatalyst starts to work. We break down the nitrous oxides, and because there's a constant flow, then you will see the nitrous oxide, eventually going up over the period of time because it's continuously replenished. And then on the right-hand side of the slide, you'll see that we've done the analysis, treated and untreated, to show how much nitrate we produce. So there's no nitrate pretty much on the sample. We've used extra refined deionized water to solubilize the nitrates and then analyze that for the nitrate content. So it's quite simple. And an easy way of showing that is you can put a piece of glass outdoors, spray it, or just leave the material there, leave it over a day, and then you can analyze that material for nitrate. It's quite simple to show from a nitrate point of view what it does.
Sorry to interrupt. Just in the interest of time, I think we might have to skip through the graphs, and if you could move on to the...
Yeah, I just realized what the time is. I do talk.
So it's fascinating, but I think just if we go to the next section.
This is a published work anyway. There's a published paper that you'll see at the bottom. Happy to share that as part of your documents. We've done work with bird's eyes on peas. That's interesting. That's quite important to say that in legumes, because of the way we supply the nitrogen, we don't have an effect on the nodules. So we do see a benefit on legumes, and peas has been a crop that we've actually used RDIF quite a bit. Again, full report on that. We've got the cereal works. I don't know if that has been shared with you already. That's work that has been done on plots where we reduced the amount of nitrogen by 25%, and we also mixed it with Tricia M, so the bacteria, because we have very different modes of action. The bacteria are endophytic. They're fixing nitrogen inside the plant, whilst we, with RLIF, are on top of the plant and producing the nitrate there. So, there's a synergy. We're doing a lot more work now with a number of bacteria products and a number of crops to understand it, but you'll see between the control, obviously 25% of a reduction in nitrogen has reduced the yield, and RLIF has actually provided a better benefit, as I was saying earlier, with a reduction in nitrogen where RLIF is used. And also if we look at our leaf compared to the control, there's no really difference there, but that's I think that was a 220 kilogram or 200 kilogram. So take-home message is that we have to see a benefit. We want to reduce that nitrogen and be confident to push on that. What happens to protein? Obviously, you reduce nitrogen, you reduce the protein, but we've actually compensated for quite a high amount. And if you look at the R-leaf that is used on top of the standard practice, we do have a bit of an effect as an increased protein. And then if you look at the protein comparing Trisha and R-leaf together, again, because you've got another nitrogen source, then we do have a higher protein in that, so there's a bigger effect. There's more work to do because we haven't actually tried the combination in reduced nitrogen. That's some work that Agrovista was involved in an Innovate UK project with us, and we've got a lot of field trials that is typically split field trials. We haven't had any trial that we had a negative effect, which is the first point of the work, and in several we have an increase in yield, and this is without the reduction of nitrogen. And yeah, Tim, I think perhaps I can share, because of time, maybe to get some questions, I can share the data. Again, the key messages that we already spoke to. What we have is, I don't know if it is useful, but is a return on investment calculator. So you can actually use this to define which nitrogen source you're using, what is the price, then if you're reducing the fertilizer or not, how much is the area, and then it will give you the cost per hectare. And using R-leaf, we can also work out what that extra cost is. If they do reduce the nitrogen, of course, there's that compensation that is calculated. So we have a saving or not. And then depending on the reduction of nitrogen, if it is not too high and you would expect a yield increase, then we can add this yield increase there, which then it will take account to show you what the total saving or what the benefit is of using R-leaf. And we're developing this further using more data, so that will be a useful tool to have in front of you basically for making decisions. On the logistics side of things and how the product is, that's the front label. We put in 5-liter cans. It comes at 2 cans per box, so we have 10 liters in a box on a pallet, because the SG, so the specific gravity, is 1.5, so it's 1.5 kilos per liter. It's quite heavy. We have 640 liters per pallet. Yeah, and some links there, which not too bad, I guess.
Oh, that's great. That's a very thorough presentation, and yeah, that's been really useful. Thank you. Just a few questions, but I am conscious of time. So what I would say is that if anyone has a question that they think of when they're driving around today, or at any point, if you want to send it to me, I'll make sure that Thomas gets the question, and we'll circulate any answers to any questions that we get. One question, which I guess is more philosophical, is there enough titanium, if this product takes off, to supply global markets?
Yeah, and just on that, Tim, I'll say, happy to have my details shared. If anyone has questions, if you're setting up trials, if you want me to speak to a farmer, I'm available, happy to do that, and my team is as well.
Thank you.
On the titanium, yes, there are, let me get this right, there are something like 9 million tons of titanium produced yearly. It's used by many industries. So if we are to get something like 20 million hectares, that will only equate to something like 4% of the material that is globally available. So we've done the work, making sure that as this takes off, we can actually supply it globally. So we can.
Okay, thank you. And just questions on tank mixing, which I guess if there are specific tank mixing questions, do we put those to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to answer this. And if there is something specific or unknown or a new product, we'll have to do a bit of work. Tank mix is not just mixing the product, and if it looks good, is fine. But because we don't, the material is not water soluble, it's not reactive, it doesn't bind. So typically we're fine. And in the last 3 years that the product has been out there used in farms, tank mix, we haven't had any issue. We haven't had any issue in trials. So we're okay. And typically fungicides, PGRs, and an insecticide or adjuvants, we should be absolutely fine with those. So we shouldn't have an issue. But any questions, do let me know.
Okay. Well, in the interest of time, and we've covered most of the questions that have cropped up, what I'll do is repeat the message that if anyone does have a question, please send it to me, and I'll make sure Thomas gets the question and circulate the answer. The presentation, the webinar is recorded and will be in the training zone shortly. So I just really want to say a big thank you, Thomas. It's been a fascinating presentation from you this morning. I appreciate your time. I think R-Leaf is something unique, which is creating interest, and rightly so, and be interested to follow it through. So on that note, I will draw the webinar to a close. Thank you for the attendees. Hope you've enjoyed that, and have a good day. Thank you.
Yeah, and a quick thank you from me. Thanks for everyone listening, and those that will listen offline. I appreciate your time, and I hope you found it useful. I'm looking forward to work with you.
Great. Thank you, Thomas. Okay, have a good day all.
Bye for now. Thank you.